Can you hear me now? Now you should be able to hear me. Sorry, guys, it was my fault. So as I was saying, okay, I can speak. As I was saying, my let me even put a bit more. I don't know, 180%. So you should be able to hear me better. I hope it doesn't stutter. It was stuttering for me too. I don't know why, but technically I have excellent conditions. So I don't know. I hope that it can work out. Welcome to this week in Svelte, episode 93, right? We are getting close to 100. Let's see if we can make something special for 100. Sorry for my, again, nasal voice and sore throat. Unfortunately, I'm a bit sick. So let's jump right into it, because then we will have a bit of live coding, which, it's always fun. So let's start. I think we have just a couple of releases. One is fix reconnecting. When reconnecting unknown derives, removed their unknown flag. Again, as I've said multiple times, unknown derives is a very good optimization, but it's annoying sometimes because they're very difficult to deal with. Allow mutation of private derived state. So this was just sort of a missed opportunity, I would say, because basically, if you can technically reassign, reassign, but you can mutate derived state. So if you have something like, let me open the playground. Yeah. Wait, can you see my playground? What is going on? Sorry. Because I like in my preview I still see the other website, but how could that be? If let me see. Sorry, guys. I'm gonna check out on YouTube. What? Gosh. This is not even WebRTC. Like, this is just OBS. Well, okay. I don't know. Maybe it was. Yeah, I think maybe like it was fumbling for some reason. This should be fixed. So what I was about to say is you cannot reassign a derived. So let's say that you have $sign state like this. If you have, I don't know, let uppercase is equal $sign derived name dot to uppercase. Let's say that you have an input bind value to name, and then you show uppercase. This obviously works, but you cannot reassign the right. So if I do button change and I do on click like this, and I open and I do uppercase is equal to something else, you will get an error, right? And the error is cannot reassign to the right state. But let's say that I do something like this, value like this. Technically, I can reassign this. I can do dot value, and I can do, yeah, and I can show dot value here. Technically I can do it, and if I change it, it doesn't work, but that's because for other reasons, because this is not stateful. But you can actually make it stateful, and this is, by the way, one of my favorite tricks to not use an effect. If you do $derived.by like this, You can create state within a derived, so you can do const ret is equal to state, well, and do name like this, and then you can return ret. And now I can do uppercase name, and I can do uppercase name here. And yeah, I need to do name dot to uppercase. Now, if you do something like this will work in the sense that it's still in sync, but if you change it, you can actually change it, right? And then when you change it back, the derived will kick in and will revert this thing. So this is a way to link your state to a derived and still be able to reassign it, and it's one of my favorite tricks. And so, like, this is perfectly fine. You can do it. What you could not do is do the same thing inside a class. So if you want to do something like const derived, writable derived, and have a class that would do the same thing, you could have not done do that. So if you did something, not const, sorry, class writable derived, if you had something like there is equal to derived dot by, and you would return like basically something like this. Let's do the exact same. Return ret. And let's make it actually public. So if we do the same thing here, and now uppercase is a new writable derived, yeah, I need to do it before like this, and I should call this name. Yeah, no, actually, let's do there, and then we can do there.name, there.name. So now this absolutely works, but, and actually, like, this bug was just for private state. Like, if this was a private state and you had something like get there, set there, I mean, I need to code the whole thing, sorry. So let's say that you had something like this. You could write a class that basically encapsulated the whole thing, right? So you could have, I don't know, this is current, for example, and you could have function, for example, that will invoke the thing. And so you could do something like constructor that takes the function as input, and we'll do this dot fun is equal to fun. And then here you can do basically this dot fun like this. So this is a function. You can call it, and basically, like, now you can actually do something like this. Name dot to uppercase, and if you do something like this, you can do yeah, this needs to be public. Oh, I can't remember now. I can't remember the exact thing, but the point is, because now it's fixed, so if you tried to reassign to current, oh yeah, that's what I wanted to do. Like, what you could do is do get current is equal to the return this dot current, and set current new current is equal to, like, it's this dot current is equal to new current. So if you do something like this, you would get an error, and you still get an error. What? Did I find another bug? Gosh. wait. Oh yeah, no, obviously. Like, oh gosh, sorry guys, I'm a bit lightheaded. But basically, like, you could do this dot current $ state val, like this. Yeah, like this. And then you can do this dot current dot val like this, and this dot current dot val like this. And now obviously here I would do uppercase dot current and current here. Oh gosh, guys. Okay, let me see. Yeah, this dot current dot val. Okay, we are getting there. So basically, like, this is what the same thing that I did before, but it's a bit more generalized, right? Like, you can create this utility, and whenever you need something that has this behavior, basically it should always be this kind of derived, but you can also reassign to it. Then you can basically do this, and then when you change it, it's actually working, and you can do this. So you have this generalized derived, and the bug was that this was not allowed. While it's perfectly fine because you are returning state from a derived, but there was a check that prevented this assignment to do, like it threw a compile error, but it's perfectly fine. So all of this to see now is fixed. Sorry for the rumble, but I think it's nice to know this pattern. So we have a pretty big thing, and there's also one of my favorite new feature. But let's start from the bottom. Recursing to derived for ownership validation. This is still related to this because we recently made a change to the ownership algorithm, and basically, like, there was like the fact that a state could be created inside a derived was skipped, basically. So you would have get a warning when you reassigned these in another component, but now it's actually like it's recursing inside derived to check for thing. Use import node to clone templates for Firefox. So this is something. So if you know about it, basically the web platform is very weird, and so we have actually two ways of cloning a template. And one is clone node and one is import node. So basically, like, they do the exact thing, like it's the same thing, but up until this moment, Svelte used the clone node because clone node is actually much faster than import node for some reason. So basically, when you are writing a template, if you take a look at the generated code here, you can see that there is this template here, which is just a string, right? So to convert these into actual HTML element, what we do is we assign these to a template node, which I don't know if you know about it. It's an HTML tag that basically show, yeah, if you have a template, and by the way, it's part of the web component specification, but the point is that you can have something like this template inside your HTML, and this will not show up in the DOM itself. It's just something that you can reference from within the JavaScript, and then you can basically query select stuff from it and stuff like that. But how we use it is we dynamically create a template, we add this template, like this string, as inner HTML, and then we extract the content. So basically, this is a fast way to get a series of HTML elements, and like the browser is doing all the work. The problem is that when you use clone node or import node, there are some gotchas, and unfortunately most of those gotchas are with clone node, and it's also very browser dependent. One of the gotchas was that specifically in Firefox, if you have a lazy loading, like if you have an image with lazy loading and you use clone node on that element, it will not lazy load the image. Like, so let's say that you have image loading is equal to lazy source, I don't know, https unsplash.et/300, right? Let's say that you have something like this, and let's say that we have a div here with obviously Svelte want me to add an alt. I can do style div margin bottom, I don't know, 50 rem, something like this. Now, like what this code does, is the image does not load immediately, but it only load when you actually scroll to it. Did you see it? Like, it basically, like I scrolled to it and then it took some time because he had to load the image, which is super cool because basically like images are something that can really slow down your startup. So if you use loading lazy, you can prevent a lot of unnecessary loading of the images, because if they're not in the viewport, you don't care about them, right? So this is very, very problem was that clone node, if you use clone node and you create an image tag with clone node in Firefox, the lazy loading was not working. So before, we were using a sort of a hack. Basically, when we were loading the image before mounting the image to the DOM, we were just like removing the lazy attribute, removing the source attribute so that it was not loaded, and then add it back with JavaScript. But this was causing a bit of a problem because we added back the thing only after it was mounted to the DOM, and this meant that if you were using an action, for example, accessing the source and the loading attribute in an action, you would see a loading being not there and a source being empty. So it was very weird. But luckily we found out that the slowness of import node is only in Chrome and Safari. And Firefox is actually faster with import node. And so what we decided to do is let's switch. So now if you are accessing a Svelte website with Firefox, you will use import node for the whole application. And if you are, because that's another problem, like you could not just import node that image tag. You had to import node the whole application. So now we switched to that, basically. So if you are on Firefox and you access a Svelte application, you will use import node, otherwise you will use clone node. Tweak effect, self-invalidation logic, run transition dispatches without reactive context. Probably something that did Dominic did. It's way above my pay grade. Not that I'm being paid, but oh no, it's actually yeah, true. It's Dominic. So fix value checked not correctly set using spread. So when you're using spread, we do something a bit different, and it was not setting value and checked correctly in some very edge case specific situation, but it was still annoying, so it was fixed. This is a bug that come from this fix here. It was my fault, sorry guys. But basically, like, I was not taking into account private and public, and so if you had a private field that also had a public getter, it was wrongly triggering a constant assignment of the right state. And now the big guy, like the feature, the minor change, SSR-Safe ID generation with $props.id. So there is a new rune, and this basically allows you to have an ID for every instance of the component. And I want to show you like with a child. If I have a script tag and I do let ID is equal to $props.id, and I just render the ID. Let's do it in a p tag, for example. So if you have something like this, you can import child from child.svelte, and if I render this, you can see that I get C1. So this is my ID. If I render it twice, I get C2, C3, C4, and so on and so on. This is not very interesting in the playground. And the reason because it's not very interesting is because the reason, in my opinion, why this props ID is interesting, because you can, like, it's not just about creating an ID, because you can literally just do crypto.random UUID, and it works. You can generate random IDs. But the good thing about props ID is that this is server-side rendered safe, in the sense that if you actually server-side render this application, you will get a different ID which starts with S, and when you mount that component on the client, you will actually get the same ID. So this is very useful, and let me open SvelteLab so that I can show you. In the case where you want to have stable IDs within the server and the client. So if you are rendering, like personally, when I would use this is actually if you want to, I don't know, interact with the DOM in a way that it's more like raw, like you can add an inline script and be sure that the reference to the ID will be the same. But let's actually do, so if I create a new file, child.svelte, and let's copy over this child.svelte here, like this. And then if we go back here and we go to the app and we do this in the plus page.svelte, not .server, sorry, like this. Now, if I refresh the page, as you can see, I have S1, S2, S3, S4. And the nice thing about this is that, like, was generated on the server. And if I have something else, like let's say that I have let checked is equal to state true, actually false, and if I have, let's say that I do if checked like this, let's say that I have an input, I have input type checkbox bind checked. Oh, I have an extra O here. And let me refresh. So now you can see that I have S1, S2, S3, and if I mount a new component, is actually C1 because that's only client-side rendered. So, but again, the important bit is that basically you have a way to generate IDs that are actually congruent between the server and the client. So if you use it, for example, to assign it to as an ID to a label or stuff like that, you can actually do it. Now, the one issue is like you can only use it once. So if you, even if I have this, for example, I will get an error that you cannot use props ID more than once. And this is because like props ID is actually returning always the same ID. Like it's the ID of the component itself. So it's not a generator for a new ID, basically. And that's one thing for the instance itself. And also you can not, like you need to use it to assign to a variable. Basically, you cannot do something like function x is stuff is equal to props ID. And currently, you cannot use it in outside of Svelte component. Like it's only meant to be used on the top level of a component. I've actually opened a PR to change this, but there is a bit of discussion going on because like there is a way to make it work so that you can use it inside functions, like inside utilities function, but it could be confusing for the user that they are getting the same ID every time. So we are trying to figure out it's actually a change that it's actually worth it. But this is pretty cool. So let's actually move to the other part of the changelog, which is SvelteKit that did not have any release. vtest use client and server side testing for Kit. Yeah, we didn't have much. So yeah, the changelog is done. Now a small announcement. I know that you've heard me say this over and over again. It's getting closer. I mean, we still have some months, but Svelte Summit is happening on spring 2025, May 8 and 9 in Barcelona. There will also be online tickets. They will be available in a bit, but please come to Barcelona. Please come to say hi. Very interesting news is also that we got a workshop running. So I will actually host this workshop. So it's all about Svelte 5. It's in a different venue. It's on One Cowork Cathedral, and it will be the day before the conference. So if you have yet to book your flight, or if you already booked your flight the day before, please join me, because I think this is a very nice workshop. And it's basically how to migrate from Svelte 4 to Svelte 5, but I think there are some interesting bits, for example this, which is an introduction to JavaScript signals. Like we will actually build a bare bone framework, like a bare bone reactive library that uses signals. So this will actually help you like build better applications. So if you want, you can go to sveltesummit.com/workshops, and you can actually see everything about let me do it. Yes, sveltesummit.com/workshops. This should work. So please come, and obviously please come to the Svelte Summit. I cannot wait for it. I want to see. And also, we got the talks announced. So we have a bunch of speakers. Obviously, Rich Harris will speak there. Scott Tolinsky from Syntax FM. Matthias, which is also known as Patak. This is one of the Vite core maintainers. And then we have you guys that submitted your talks. So we can actually go over, like, so let's see, privacy first architecture, local first, and alternatives to GDPR pop-ups. Very cool. So local first is pretty big inside our, like, now it's growing a lot. I'm very interested in it, so I want to hear from it. Introduction to SveltePlot, a layered grammar of graphics visualization framework for Svelte. So this is very interesting. It feels like something that might get big. Then we have Theo ultimate guide to building web component with Svelte. It's a Svelte ambassador. Lucas, tracing the slowdown open telemetry in SvelteKit made easy. And he knows his craft. I actually met him last night in Vienna. And he's working for Sentry, so he knows his craft. Obviously, Bert, the dragon, like, is a great guy. And how to win Svelte with Svelte, the incredibly true story of how we migrated the second biggest furniture website in the world to Svelte. Pretty nice. Dominic, another Svelte and Vite maintainer, testing 1234 is not some like error. It's actually the title of his talk, pretty interesting. Then we have Zeu. I don't know if it's Zeu or Zeu. I don't know. I think it's Zeu, right? It's a Svelte content creator, obviously. I guess you may know her. And she will talk about TownStack in SvelteKit, example for query and table. Jeppe, one of the storybook maintainer, strike the perfect balance, component testing with Storybook, Svelte, and vtest. From component API to SSR Evan, Svelte in orbit. This I think it's very interesting. I don't know, like I don't know the pitch for this talk. I think this will be about like probably they are using Svelte in some, like I don't know, on the ISS, and I'm pretty hyped about it. I don't know, right? Obviously, Grisha, creator of Svelte, we actually had it on stream last 2 weeks ago. Create an immersive product configurator with Svelte. Then we have macro data refinement with Svelte. Real-time data visualization with Svelte. Obviously, we know Svelte is very good at it. So yeah, please join us. The venue is super cool, as you can see. And obviously you will see a lot of the community. So yeah, please join us. I cannot wait to meet you all. Now let's move to the second bit of the thing, which is a bit of live coding, and I need to refresh, and hopefully I will actually get back to this. So you've seen the thumbnail, and by the way, Stalky is here, and I'm very happy that he is, because this is basically his idea. Like I had this idea and I coded it a bit differently, but I like Stalky idea much more. So this is Stalky idea, and let's figure out. I coded this very basic application. As you can see, like you have my cool app, the best counter ever. And you can read more about our awesome story. We are a very old company. Sorry, guys. And we made counters since 1926. But now we are forced to close because a dev rewrote our app in React. Pledge our case. Sorry, guys. Now, Now, what's the use case? If we go into the layout, we have our children here. But let's say that we want something a bit more dynamic, right? So let's say that we want our actions here, which is a button. So let's say it's not exactly a button. Like we want something that needs to live here, for example, pledge our case, as we've seen. And this button obviously should be there. And it should do something, like maybe it's a link, maybe it's a button. Like it's something that it's there, and but the problem is we don't want these to be there in every page. We want the page to control what's inside this layout, and this technically, like it was literally impossible to do with Svelte 4. With Svelte 5, it's actually doable. There are some gotchas. So let's start with do it the wrong way. And how you can do it is with snippets. So what you can do is basically snippet context.ts. We can import, oh gosh, guys, sorry, context from Svelte. Let me format. We can create our context. So const snippet is equal symbol export function set return set context snippet, and I want my snippet context like this, and we can do export function get, and we have get context, and we get the snippet like this. And let's also write a type for it. Type snippet snippet context. Let's say that it's an object to register with a name, I would say. Sorry. Oh, sorry, I should do this. So this is name, which is a string, and snippet, which is a snippet. So you can just type snippet from Svelte, and this is a snippet. Yeah, with 0 arguments for the moment, we can see. And we return void. So now that we have something like this, we can actually do snippet context like this, so that we have TypeScript set up, snippet context, like this. And now in our layout, what we can do is we can do let snippets like this, and we can do import set from snippet context.ts like this. And actually, let's do long equal TypeScript. What's going on here? Yeah, this should be JS, I guess. Yeah, that's fine. Format. So we have our snippets, and this actually doesn't need to be state, and you will see why. I mean, let's make it state for a moment, yeah, I guess, but we can probably remove it. So, and now what we need to do is we can call the set function, and we need to provide our registration thing. So we can do register, and this will get a name and a snippet like this, and we can do snippets at name is equal to snippet, right? So now that we have these set up, what we can do is here, instead of doing button pledge our case, we can do at render snippets dot, I don't know, and we can choose a name. Snippets at, I don't know, actions, and we can do this so that if actions is, yeah, does not exist on type this, let's say that this is a record of string and snippet with no argument. And let's import the type snippet from Svelte like this. So this should be good, right? So what we do is we render the snippet action. In this case, everything works fine because like there's no snippet actions, so this does not render actually anything. But now what we can do is if we go in our about page, we can, let me copy this. We can import from snippet context. We can import get lang equal ts. Oh. Lang equal ts. And now what we can do is we can get the snippet context, and then we can call register, and we need to pass a name, in this case actions, and a snippet. Now we don't have a snippet yet, but we can create one. Snippet actions, snippet, and we can do button pledge our case, right? Like this. And we can pass these actions. So now it works, and if you see, when I navigate here, it should work, but it doesn't for some reason. Let me see. Is this being called? Let me see. Console.log name. Actions, it's being called. I have no idea what is going on. Snippets.actions. Like, if I do snippets.actions, it's there, right? You assigned those snippets. Oh gosh. Thank you, Stalky. Snippets. It's a typo. So, as you can see, like, this works mostly. If I click here, I get this. But this is actually very problematic. The moment I create a new file, I call it plus layout.ts, and I do export const client-side routing is equal to false. Client-side rendering is equal to false. So if I am server-side rendering my application and the user disabled JavaScript and goes to read more, it does not have its action. The reason for this is because, like, for this to work, you actually need JavaScript enabled. And this also means another thing, that as long as the JavaScript doesn't load, that button will be not there. And that's one problematic thing. The second problematic thing, no, I suppose, like, for this is probably fine. Yeah, I think for, like, since we are using context, it's probably fine. Like, the snippets will not leak into other requests. My original, like, I actually coded something similar to this, like, when I knew about snippets. Like, the moment I knew about snippets, I got this idea. But I coded it in a different way, and it was leaking, if I remember correctly. So, since we are using context, it should probably be fine. But yeah, I mean, this is not acceptable, at least for me, because this means that a server-side rendered application will not have that action there, and this is it's very annoying. But there is a fix for this, so it's a bit more contrived. So let's switch back to true so that we can actually get our case sorted here. And let's see what we can do to actually make this work. Now, the reason why it doesn't work in server-side rendering is because, like, the context is actually working in server-side, but the problem is that we are rendering the snippet actions before we are rendering the children. So if by any chance, like, you actually want these in the footer, let's say you want something like this, ignore the fact that the app is broken, this would technically work. like so. If we disable, if we set it to false, and we go to read more, this is working, right? And the reason this is working is because, like in this case, we are actually a snippet before we actually go to. Sorry, I lost my thing. Okay. We are rendering the snippet before we actually render, like before we try to render snippet.actions, we actually render the children, so the children is able to set the context, and so when we reach this point of the code, snippet.actions is actually there. So this is server-side rendered. So what we can do to fix this, to make this work, even if, because obviously you cannot pretend that people will actually do this. But there is one small trick that you can do. And what you need to do basically is also use, like, what you can do is, if you, instead of using props, like instead of using children like this, you use snippets.children, and you wrap your whole root in a children snippet that you register, and then you render children first. This will work like magic. So what we can do is basically do something like this. Instead of rendering just children, we can render snippets.children. There is one catch, which is that you need to add render children here as the first thing. But now the important thing is that plus page.svelte, you need to wrap everything. So everything needs to be wrapped inside. Oh, I think I'm lagging a bit. I don't know. Let's see. Everything needs to be wrapped in a snippet children. Like this. So you can do like this. And obviously everything needs to be registered like this. So if we go back here, we can do this, and we can register children, like this. And then inside here, obviously we need to register multiple. Context is equal to get, and we can do context.register and context.register children. And then we need to wrap this snippet in a children. Snippet. So by doing this, what we are doing is, if we refresh this page, everything breaks. What the fuck is going on? Fail to load. Oh yeah, I need to do this, and this is like this. Okay. So as you can see, now we are not server-side rendering. So sorry, we are not client-side rendering. So if I click here, it's actually working, and if we go back to here, it's working. And if we enable client-side rendering again, like this, and we refresh the page, even on navigation, we actually get the desired behavior of doing this. So this is pretty powerful, and I think you can also build some abstraction. I was looking at it very briefly. I can't remember if it's actually possible, but you can even build some abstraction where basically you have a component that the only thing that does is registering every children that it gets on the content, and so that you, instead of doing all of these, you can just wrap your whole thing as a component in this component. And actually, let's actually build it, because it should be pretty easy. Basically, what you can do is you can have children.svelte, and the only thing that this component does is basically what this is doing. So you import get const and then you go let props is equal $props like this, actually snippets like this, and then basically what you can do is I'm wondering if I should do it in an effect, but I suppose no, because otherwise it will not work on the client, on the server. So yeah, I suppose you can just do for let snippet of snippets, and you can do context. Sorry, let snippet in snippets. And you can do context dot register snippet snippets at snippet. And so basically, like, you do just these, and I think it's fine. Like, you don't have to render anything, I think. I'm wondering. I think it's fine. I think you don't have to render anything because you're just registering. And so basically now you can just oh, I think I'm lagging again. You, instead of doing this, you can just do import children from children.svelte, and instead of doing this dance here, you can just do children, and you put everything inside this. So you can even remove the snippet here like this, children, and the same thing you can do it for this plus page.svelte. So instead of having to manually put the action to get the context, you can just do this, and you wrap children like this, poink, poink, and everything should work fine. And you don't even need children anymore. Yep. So if I do this, it's working. Let's disable client-side routing, false, and it's working again and again. Pretty cool, right? So let's remove the log here just for the sake of it. I think this is a pretty powerful pattern, and it's also very elegant because at the end of the day, like, you can build some abstraction like this, and at the end of the day, like, if you take a look, like, it's not that big of a code. Like, you just need to import your children everywhere. Unfortunately, you need to do it, and pass the snippets that you want. So it's a bit more code, but it unlocks some very powerful dynamic. So I will add this in the description after we finish. I think I cannot paste it here. Yeah, unfortunately I cannot. I think I can do it from here. Yeah, so if you want to see something like this, and I think that's it. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed this week in Svelte, and I'll see you guys next week. See ya.